Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon once again. Let me introduce myself. I'm Ramūnas Vilpišauskas, Jean Monnet Professor at the Institute of International Relations and Political Science of Vilnius University, and will be moderating this panel. And I would like, first of all, to thank the panelists who kindly agreed to share their thoughts on the topic of cybersecurity and its importance for European countries and European Union these days. We have a nice mix of representatives from different parts of Europe and also from the European Commission, who are good experts, experienced in this area. So I'm very happy that we will have an opportunity to hear Mr. Thibaut Kleiner, who is Deputy Director General for Communications, Networks, Content and Technology at the European Commission. Then we will have an opportunity to hear Ambassador Károly Dán, who is the head of Permanent Mission of Hungary to the OSCE, the UN, and other international organizations. And we will also have an opportunity to hear a view from Spain, from Ms. Verónica Hernández, who is a Deputy Director of the Spanish National Observatory for Tech and Society. So, as I said, a nice mixture of nationalities and institutional representation. I suggest that we proceed in the same order as outlined in the program. Just before giving a floor to Mr. Kleiner, I would like to remind the audience that you have an opportunity to send your questions to the panelists via Slido platform. So don't hesitate to do that, and I will pose your questions after the initial interventions. I would also like to remind our participants that I suggest to limit your initial interventions to around 7 or 10 minutes. And we will then have quite enough time for Q&A session and your additional reflections on the topic. Just a few thoughts in addition to what was described in the program, which sets out the rationale for this panel and for the topic chosen. It's of course, first of all, linked to the geopolitical situation that we are all observing these days. And in this respect, cyber issues are, first of all, linked to security dimension, international security, protection of critical infrastructure, provision of critical services, and naturally this first probably comes to our mind when we think about cybersecurity these days, though at least in Lithuania and I think in some other European Union countries, the first, so to speak, wake-up call in this respect was 2014, and cyber attacks which took place against Ukrainian critical infrastructure in 2014, 15, 16. So this isn't really something new. And of course, international security is not the only dimension which is important when we speak about cyber issues. We have one of the priorities of the European Commission, which is Europe fit for a digital age. So There is an important dimension of the single market, which is directly linked to cyber issues when we think about digital trade, digital communications, digital services. Then there is, of course, another important aspect linked to information and disinformation issues. So these are just a few topics or thematic elements of cyber area. So I suspect that each participant, each panelist will present what they see currently as the most important issues from their own institutional perspective, also from perspective of particular countries like Hungary and Spain. I'm very pleased to give a floor to Mr. Thibaut Kleiner, who is experienced 20 years plus experience of working for the European Commission, and is experienced not only in this area, but also in other areas like competition policy. So, Mr. Kleiner, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Ramūnas, for this introduction and also for inviting me today. I think that this topic on cybersecurity in a digital Europe is extremely important. I mean, and very timely. As we all know, the scale and the frequency of threats and attacks has been increasing by the hour in the internet and the digital area. People woke up to this already because of the ransomware, the scale of the damage that were done, but also cyber attacks took place over the past 10 years, and increasingly the damage done to economic interests, the damage to critical infrastructure is increasing and very visible. We have had criminal elements for political motivations, but I think today what we are witnessing is even a new dimension about the importance of cybersecurity, because we are in a situation of cyber warfare. In reality, what is happening around Ukraine is even of a greater risk. And it shows that something that maybe was not meant to happen, in fact, has overtaken us. And that we need not only to react, but we need to do it with the magnitude and the resources that are needed to really make sure that these cyber attacks and the spillover of these attacks on our member states and our economy and society are better anticipated and also better managed when we are confronted with them. And that's very much what the EU is committed doing. I mean, we have actually recently put forward our vision for the digital transformation, our compass for 2030 in terms of where we want to get. But even more, we've announced a set of digital rights and principles for our citizens, so that it's very clear what really we want to achieve. And one of the areas that we put forward was indeed cybersecurity. Because if we are not providing online safety and security, our population will refrain from embracing the digital transformation. And they will also, refrain from making sure that, we get the best out of what is on offer. So how are we approaching this in terms of the EU policy? And there's been a lot of activity in terms of, cybersecurity strategies, in terms of legislative proposals, some of them still in the making. So I will just flag also, for the sake of remaining short, three highlights from our policy. The first one is the preparedness. So we have to be prepared and ready for cyber incidents. It will not stop. It will only continue to increase. So we need to get ready, and we need to make sure that all of us, be it government, regions, municipalities, private sector, private individuals, we all need to improve our game. And that's why we had some time ago made a proposal already on network and information security, so that critical infrastructures are benefiting from a sufficient level of protection and preparation. We are now improving even this through the NIS2 directive, so that we increase the scope. We cover also medium and large entities in other sectors, such as data centers, chemicals, waste management, public administration, all these areas that we've seen also targeted recently. I mean, hospitals have been a prime target during COVID times. I think we all agree that this is not acceptable, and we need to protect these essential infrastructures. We also are making sure that through the Cyber Resilience Act that we are preparing now, it is announced, and it should come out at the end of the year, that we will also improve the cybersecurity requirements for ICT products and services. I mean, we need really to get to this level, because best effort is not good enough anymore. We need to make sure that there is a minimum requirement for some products and services in terms of their cybersecurity. And we also need to make sure that we have proper evidence in terms of what needs to be added. And I just would like to mention, we have just recently called for consultations. We have a call for evidence. So really, participants here from this event are free to engage and tell us their views. This will be beneficiary for how we organize the scope of this legislation. So that's preparation, very important. The second element is really how we react, how we address issues. And this very much is about awareness and coordination, because there are many actors that need to work together, from the public sector, but also from the private sector. We need also to work between civilian and sometimes military and law enforcement. And that's something new that cannot be underestimated. We have this cyber crisis liaison organization network, Cyclone, that has been established between member states, and this is something that is very useful. Also with EU institutions, bodies and agencies, we are trying to work together with CSIRTs, with CERTs, to have operations there, to be able to react. And a new element we have introduced is the Security Operations Center. So these are a new feature that we are funding through EU budget. Basically, the problem is that the scale of the threats is accelerating, and we found that too often we are slow. So it takes us sometimes 100 to 200 days to be able to identify viruses and attacks. And we believe that we can improve this by using elements like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and our security operations centers are designed now to detect cyber attacks earlier. So we think this is really important, so that we can react, we can coordinate with partners. And now we've put on the table 300 million euros to support public-private partnership in that respect. So that's the second pillar, I would say, being able to react and to be aware of what is happening. And the third pillar I wanted to underline is really the need also for solidarity. We are in this together, and the EU right now, I think, is experiencing what it means, to be under attack, and when our democratic values are under attack. So that's what is important these days, to make sure that the way we react is done in solidarity. And that's why also we are we are providing support to Ukraine right now in terms of, assistance, in terms of resources, in terms of pieces of codes that they can use to defend themselves. So at the end of the day, we want also to make sure that all our member states benefit from EU support financially, but also in terms of resources. That's why we have also our agency, the cyber agency, ENISA, that is just opening a new bigger offices in Athens to have the better means to support our efforts. That's why we also have these elements in terms of the cybersecurity competence center, where we will support small and medium-sized enterprises to improve access to cybersecurity resources and to experts helping them preparing and protecting their activities. So 3 pillars indeed: preparation, awareness and ability to react, and solidarity. These are the 3 points I wanted to highlight, and I will stop there. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you very much. Could I just follow up with one quick question? Thank you for outlining those 3 pillars. And well, we know that national security is exclusive competence of member states, as well as things like public administration, where to keep data centers, whether to have copies of them somewhere in other countries or in the clouds, or healthcare sector is also mostly a competence of member states. So I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the main challenge for European Commission, having in mind that it's first of all member states that are dealing with those issues in well, advancing your initiatives, because here you mostly coordinate, you mostly contribute with sharing good practices and some financial resources, which are of course very small compared to common agricultural policy, for example. So what do you see as the main challenges in well, advancing your proposals and getting member states implement them?
Thanks. I think it's a very relevant question you are asking, and you're right. EU competence is what it is, and these days, I mean, we see increasingly that cybersecurity has to be close to also military abilities to protect your territory. So I think that this is a new evolution. At the same time, the nature of the cyber threats is by nature, cross-border. It is not, the same malware, will attack you no matter your nationality or your location to some extent, So the nature of cybersecurity is much more prone in terms of developing resources and in terms of developing solutions to the EU or even more global level of intervention, especially because let's face it, we need to get together to have the skills, to have the resources, and to have also the capabilities and funding for them. So that's why we believe that our role is indeed of a coordination one, is a supporting one in terms of developing these excellent resources. But at the same time, it's also about helping member states, to connect. My experience, 10 years ago when we started the network, so the NIS directive, was a lot of reluctance from member states to share information. They didn't want, to, especially because, some of these people were former spies, working now in security. So of course, the Iron Curtain was not there anymore, but the trust was not necessarily immediate between some countries. And what we see is that through the EU intervention, we can build this space where there is understanding, when there is trust, and when there is information sharing, which is so important to basically help the national level to improve their capabilities, but also to be able to react and respond. If you don't know, if you don't have the information, it will take you hours and hours to analyze the malware. Whereas if you can immediately piggyback on what some partners have done, you're much more efficient. And I think the third point where we, I think, can help is the link with the private sector and the economic partners. I mean, in ENISA, we have a group of partners, and many of them the private companies that are helpful. We are also building these bridges through our activities, not only ENISA, but also, as I was saying, the Cybersecurity Competence Center, and other means to our cert. This again is easier if you have an entry point at the EU level that can then, make sure that the benefit of these public-private efforts are spread among many member states. So we are not in charge necessarily, and I think that's the right way, but we can still help a lot, and we are trying our best.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope there will be more questions from the audience later. And now I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Dán. Are you with us, Ambassador? I see that Ambassador is connected, but for some reason not switching on. Well, I suggest then that we proceed with Ms. Verónica Hernández. If Verónica, it's okay with you.
Yeah.
I hope Ambassador will become visible soon. So please share with us your experience from Spain. I know that you have a lot of valuable insights into those issues that we are discussing related to cybersecurity from your national perspective. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, first of all, good afternoon and hello to the other panelists, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. My name, as you said, is Verónica Hernández, and I'm the Deputy Director of the National Observatory for Tech and Society in Spain, and I'm very honored to be in these conversations, particularly in this key moment for Europe, as you were just saying. I have to say I'm not the most expert person in cybersecurity in Spain. On the contrary, I'm quite new to the subject, and my 2 cents today will be bringing to this conversation one of our latest report on the subject of cybersecurity talent, virtually speaking, because the conversation is about present, but also long-term view, and even not so long-term, we need to face the cybersecurity talent gap today if we want to continue to be on the top of the cybersecurity defense. As you may know, Spain has been qualified as the 4th European country and 7th worldwide as the most consolidated cybersecurity sector. And in fact, we can see 10-15% annual growth on the sector. And we were top country in research and cybersecurity projects in 2020. So this is why I consider it makes sense to look at the Spanish recent history on what we have been doing in cybersecurity. And as such a general trend, I have to agree with my dear panelists that coordination and knowledge sharing is absolutely key. This is what my institution does mainly. The National Observatory is trying to generate knowledge on the impact of technology in society, and we analyze policies, trends, strategies, and we try to disseminate that knowledge around society. We need to transfer this knowledge to citizens, to SMIs, to all the parts, because cybersecurity is something that we need to do together, and we need to make people aware about the need to be safe and secure and cyber protected. That's the challenges that the challenge that my institution, the observatory, focus on as a contribution to the national cybersecurity strategy, where cybersecurity culture is key. So we do some research and publish some reports about different aspects of cybersecurity. And the latest one, which was published 2 weeks ago, is about cybersecurity talents. And in that way, we need to say that we wanted to quantify the current workforce of professionals in the sector and the existing demand in our country. So we weren't looking to Europe as a whole, but we were looking to Europe in terms of strategies and scenarios on different countries and how they do to increase the workforce. And so we have seen a very clear trend. The demand for cybersecurity talent is double than the supply for 2024. I mean, for every year from now and the next 3 years in the digital agenda in Europe, we will be needing 20,000 more talented, trained people in cybersecurity only in Spain. I don't want to overwhelm the audience with figures, but we are saying that we have like 42,000 professionals right now, and we will need 83,000 in 2 years. So how we do that? We need to think about right now, because now is a challenge, and as we were saying, every year is an increasing challenge. So we also need to face how we try to grow that trained professional workforce. And we need to communicate better this need, and we need to invest in vocational training and be flexible on new formats of education on the subject, because during the research, we saw that young people is not directly attracted to the cybersecurity issue. So we need to cultivate that vocational spirit on them. And we need to do it now, because they need to be trained in the next couple of years. And in fact, only 2 of every 10 people employed in cybersecurity in Spain are properly trained or have the skills to be performing all the required functions they have. So this is a challenge, a very different challenge than the one that we are seeing in our focus today, but it's a challenge that every European country, and of course the Baltic region, should be also looking at on the very near future. And that's what I wanted to bring mainly about this report, and also saying that this kind of forum, sharing our knowledge, sharing what we are seeing over the days and over the months, is the way that we can really win this battle. In Spain, we launched the national strategy in 2019. But with the pandemic and everything, we saw the need to reinforce this. And one of the most successful mechanisms is our National Cybersecurity Forum, where we meet private sector and public sector, and we have agreed to a common cause, and this is to make cybersecurity a state policy from now to the near future. So all parts are really investing and changing relationships to guarantee this cybersecurity, the operation of essential services, as you were saying, the integrity of critical infrastructure through collaboration, and also at the same time doing these midterm changes that need to happen to us, citizens' awareness and talent growth. And that were my 2 cents.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Could I just ask a quick follow-up question? Since you also noted, and I think those who are interested in cybersecurity issues know that Spain is highly ranked in this respect among not just European countries, but globally. So could you mention which factors contributed to this relatively good performance? You finished your intervention with talking about the importance of public and private partnerships. So I suppose this is one factor. Anything else that you would point to that would be worth knowing in other EU member states?
No, I think the expanse of a cybersecurity culture is key, and we've been investing on that. We even have been posting ads on the TV, explaining to every citizen how can they contribute to raise the alarm on any kind of threat. And we did this because precisely we have this platform, the National Forum, where all kind of private and public institutions are together. And for instance, when the war in Ukraine unleashed, we quickly activated a situation committee to monitor the war. And we are doing this in a very collaborative way between all the key players. I think that's the platform, the kind of platform that is helping us to identify how to focus on the important.
Thank you very much. I see already questions coming, but before we move to the questions from the audience, I'm glad that Ambassador Dán has joined us. I already introduced you, Ambassador, in the beginning, so please, the floor is yours, 7 to 10 minutes for your initial remarks.
Thank you very much. I just want to check first whether you hear me well. Good.
Yes, we do. I do.
That's always good news. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Well, first of all, I'd like to start with outlining why and how the OSCE is relevant in this whole picture. And then I'd like to turn my attention to the confidence building measures that we have developed and we are still developing among the 57 states that are at the table at the OSCE. The OSCE is the largest and most comprehensive regional security policy organization. And we believe it is very well placed to elaborate and implement practical measures. Also, obviously, arms control, other, areas of arms control and threat reduction, but very specifically also cyber and ICT security. In 2016, the 57 participating states of the OSCE adopted 16 cyber confidence building measures with the aim to enhance interstate cooperation, transparency, predictability, and to reduce the risks of misperception, and also thus avoiding escalation of conflicts that may stem from the use of ICTs. Now, you may know that among the 57 countries, we have a very wide range of nations, and among that, obviously, we have all the EU states, also the other European countries that are not still members of the EU. We also have the former Soviet republics in Central Asia. We have Russia, we have Canada, and we have the United States. This is a very complex setup of countries, and the organization has emerged from the realm of the Helsinki process, kind of molding it into an institution that would, with its various pillars, serve as a regional security organization, as a field of discussion, to avoid conflicts before they actually, before they emerge or before they kind of escalate. Now, how do we come to this with our 16 confidence building measures? It was also conceived a few years back that the internet, as it is, would be a threat to regional security if it's not governed in the sense that states have a vehicle and also the means to talk and communicate to each other in times of crisis. Now, the OSCE has a so-called communications network that is also used for sharing information on anything and everything that the OSCE is dealing with. It is designed to process data, and also it's a rather flexible alert system between the countries that are at the OSCE. With this decision in 2016, we also made this network available for communication on threats that are stemming from the use of the internet. Ever since, we have also devised like a cluster of this communications network that is solely dedicated to exchanging data or messages on cyber. This is a voluntary network. The use of the network is voluntary. Also, the use of the CBMs is voluntary. So all that we do is aiming at countries talking to each other in times of crisis or before they actually become a crisis to avoid the escalation of conflicts. I'd like to very quickly touch upon the 16 CBMs that we have so that I can a little bit elaborate on who is doing what more deeply. The first one is on sharing information on threats. The second one is cross-border cooperation. Like I said, among the 57 countries, we have a very wide variety of countries. We have some of the, along the Schengen borders. We actually have some also disputed borders. It's a very complex landscape that we're trying to navigate here. And cross-border cooperation, we truly believe is very important because neighbors to neighbors are the most important to talk when crises occur. Third one is to hold consultations. This is kind of a central CBM. Once adopted, this is going to pretty much govern how this whole set of CBMs is going to work. The fourth one is on open, interoperable, secure, and reliable internet. 5 is capacity building platform. Legislation to facilitate cooperation is number 6. Number 7 is national strategies, policies, and programs, which is basically sharing them and giving an update about them. Number 8 is points of contact. Number 9 is ICT terminologies, which is a very, very difficult one, obviously, very comprehensive. Number 10 is OSCE platforms for exchange. Number 11, regular IWG meetings. We had to put it in the number of CBM so that we actually don't lose this informal working group as we proceed. Number 12 is act jointly to reduce tensions. Number 13, effective communication channels. Number 14, public-private partnership. Number 15, critical infrastructure protection. And number 16, sharing vulnerability information. Now with these 16 CBMs, obviously it's still an open process. although we have not received proposals for additional CBMs ever since. Coming to the implementation, with the outline of the CBMs, we are actually tasked with coming up with elaborate texts that would, in combination, ensure that this set of CBMs is going to be a workable platform for all the 57 countries at the table. At some point, we felt it was very important to invite countries and ask them to kind of take more ownership, so to say, adopt CBMs alone or together with pick and choose partners who would be willing to put more effort into it. And with that, Germany and Switzerland started to develop CBM number 3 on communication. Canada and Kazakhstan started to work on number 4, which is open, interoperable, and secure and reliable internet. CBM number 5, which is capacity building developed by the United Kingdom. CBM number 9, terminology, Serbia. CBM 13, effective communication channels by the United States. CBM 14 on PPP, Austria, Belgium, Estonia, Finland, Italy, and Sweden. CBM 15 on critical infrastructure protection, Albania, France, Germany, Romania, Slovakia, and Spain. And CBM 16, which is vulnerabilities, Czech Republic, Hungary, Netherlands, and Romania. You have heard some of the countries more than once, and I believe it's a key to this process, and actually to the kind of the conclusion of this process, that we are able to invite or to bring in more stakeholders, because we are very close to completing the whole architecture of this platform. And I've also heard that CBM number 4 is developed by Canada and Kazakhstan, probably in terms of geography, kind of the furthest countries within the OSCE area, who are working on CBM number 4. The reason why we are kind of a little bit more, quiet on the work that we do is that first of all, the IWG that I've been, heading for a few years now. First of all, the IWG is an informal working group, because there is no way of formalizing more working groups within the OSCE as it is. So we need to kind of pay attention to the very core of our work, which is a very technical, very kind of down-to-earth development of ways of communication for states in times of crisis. The other issue is obviously that we are a consensus-based organization, which means that for every decision, we need all 57 states. And trust me, that is not easy. But it's doable. Like I said, we also have had a decision on the usage of the communications network. We have been able to keep and maintain a very good level of work within the IWG with all the national updates and also national strategies and the capacity building ever since. For that, the OSCE Secretariat has been also very helpful. But the majority of the work in terms of the CBMs is done by the states by their voluntary contribution. With that, I'd like to stop and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Can I also ask one quick follow-up question? Of course, the main advantage of OSCE is its inclusiveness, as you said, but these days, one probably naturally thinks of whether there is any meaningful communication going on with representatives of Russia or Belarus on those issues that you mentioned. Can you react to this?
The organization is or the work of the organization is conducted in a way that we have a chairmanship for every year. This year, our chairmanship is Poland. So they are governing the political kind of, or navigating the political landscape of the organization. What I can say on my behalf, and this is obviously related to the IWG, that Russia has been an important and contributing partner in this work. We have not yet had an IWG this year yet, but I expect that at some point we are going to do our first meeting. This is a non-political working group that I'm heading. Everything that is politics basically is done in the Permanent Council every week, and that's obviously that is where the war in Ukraine is being reflected and also being discussed. Our focus is, like I said, is on communication and maintaining relationships even in the most difficult times, and that is going to stay our target for the coming future.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Okay, so I propose now to move to the questions which are coming from the audience. I will start with the first one, which I think is primarily directed to Thibaut, but if other speakers have their own responses, please do step in as well. So the question is, has Europe become more digital because of COVID? Is there any evidence of meaningful long-term change happening? I guess this is related also to the data, whether we have evidence about structural changes taking place since the start of pandemic 2 years ago. So first of all, I would like to ask Thibaut to react whether European Commission has any reflections on this.
I would say definitely. I mean, the digital, the pandemic crisis has led to a very significant increase in the digitalization in Europe. I would maybe mention 2 or 3 pieces of evidence. I mean, first, if you look at the volume of VPN, virtual private networks, which is used for people to telework, for instance, we have seen a very big increase in this, which shows that, in a way, a lot more people have been using somehow digital means for working, and also this was observed for schooling when pupils and students went online because they couldn't go in classrooms. So that's one evidence, and the traffic also online has increased tremendously. I mean, at some point we were worried that the communication networks were not able to cope with the traffic in terms of indeed telework, but also the use of social media and streaming platforms. This was another evidence of increased digitalization. Another one that I like very much is the growth in public services online, so e-government. If you look across the EU, you see that there has been really something like a 40% growth in the use and the development of some services. I mean, from paying tax online to requesting forms directly from websites. So this is really clear. And similarly, in the use of the COVID certificate, what we developed in the EU to facilitate cross-border movement during the pandemic. I mean, we have now, we calculate more than 1 billion of such COVID certificates were downloaded. So it means really that people went online to have the facility of these certificates. And it is also a game changer because everybody, elderly people now have discovered what QR codes are in their daily lives. In restaurants also, you scan the code because there is no menu and so on. So there is, I think, really in our daily lives a big increase. At the same time, it also shows that cybersecurity is even more important. I mean, I think that the volume also of online scam has also increased. I mean, people who were victims of phishing, of ransomware, and the like has unfortunately increased. I mean, we may know all people in our families and friends that unfortunately fall victim to this. This is another side that the digital transformation, it has increased, but it has also negative side effects if we're not careful.
Thank you very much. Other panelists, maybe you would like to add? Yes, Veronica, please.
Yeah, I have to say here in Spain, the numbers of people doing remote work are being sustained. I mean, because of the pandemic, they nearly doubled. And we see now like an 8% of people is still working remotely. We see a trend also in terms of gender. So women tend to use the remote work more than men, and that's very characteristic. We are measuring remote work every quarter since the last 2 years, and it's more and more the percentage of women, the one that is growing. But also we see a new trend on remote working, that is people who works remotely very occasionally. So we see different flexibility format of remote working, and I'm sure that this plurality and this variety of ways of working remotely are thanks to the terrible pandemic we have been suffering.
Thank you for sharing Spanish experience. Yes, Ambassador.
Thank you. Although this is not exactly my expertise, I'm not kind of realm of work, but the way I can attest to this is that also international organizations went almost completely digital, or kind of completely digital for a while. In Vienna, we have many UN offices, we have the OSCE and some other organizations, and for months we were basically working online. All our meetings, well, there was a lot of discussion on obviously what platforms to use, and it was pretty difficult to sort out because we all had kind of national directives and guidelines on what applications and what software to use, and it was almost impossible to kind of cross matrix at some point, but somehow we managed. And within just a matter of days, we actually resumed our meetings, and we were able to carry out our job thanks to the technology that we are using at this moment as well. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple more questions, and both are directed towards European Union. So I suppose, again, I would first ask Thibaut to react. Should there be any European Union strategies regarding the current propaganda and disinformation coming from the Kremlin?
That's a very topical issue, and in fact, there is already, there's been for a number of years in the EU, in our external action service, a task force against Russian propaganda, notably. I mean, it's more against disinformation, but it was to a large extent originating from Russia. And we are been very active in the past weeks, also in fighting against disinformation. I mean, we were already fighting issues linked to, for instance, against vaccination, disinformation that was also targeting specific claims on some policies. But now on Ukraine, I mean, it's the level of disinformation has drastically increased. I mean, recently you may have heard about the deep fake that was produced by the Russians with a fake President Zelensky asking soldiers to stop fighting. I mean, this is really reaching new levels in terms of propaganda. Unfortunately, it's not so well done, so you can easily see it's a fake, but nevertheless, it's a big issue, and we see that it's continuing. I mean, the Russian outposts, the same networks that where anti-vax are used now against Ukraine. We are trying to support media education. We have also something called EDMO, which is there to support media online. I would really invite you to look at their website, because they debunk a number of disinformation posts. It's quite useful and interesting. And we don't have enough budget probably, but we are spending some budget from our media program on media literacy and also on supporting journalism. So I think, yes, definitely. But the current situation shows that in war times is even more critical, and that's why the EU has proposed, in fact, that some propaganda outlet of the Kremlin are actually shut down in Europe. RT and then Sputnik.
These are very good points that you raise. Can I just follow up with a related question? Do you have any feedback evidence? I mean, which measures work, which work less? Maybe you could share your thoughts on this.
I mean, as far as disinformation is concerned, I mean, there as well, our approach is I would say, has two steps. The first one is really to identify disinformation content. So these are, we are using specific techniques there as well. I mean, artificial intelligence certainly in the future should be also a prominent tool. But then how do you, once you have identified the content, you need to take it out when it's also illegal somehow. So that's where the work with platforms is essential. And there we have, the code of conduct on disinformation, where we work with the large platforms. We have also the forthcoming Digital Services Act that will reinforce even the provisions. But if we cannot take it down because it's not illegal as such, and just disinformation that is in categories that are more borderline, and we don't want to prevent freedom of speech, so you need to also be a bit careful not to take down excessively, then we need to have somehow to promote also the true message, and to use their fact checkers that also can reply and propose the alternative messaging. So that's where we have also a network of volunteers. It has increased through the Ukraine crisis of people really who fact checked and who can provide rebuttal or competing messaging online.
Thank you. Do other panelists want to react to this question on disinformation coming from Kremlin?
Sorry, I don't have specific numbers on this. We are still monitoring, and we don't have numbers yet. I think we will have, because it's really necessary to see how deep and wide this threat is. Only can say that the public seems to be more and more aware of the phenomenon, and this is a conversation that is now happening in every conversation, and that's a good trend. We don't have the numbers, but obviously everyone is feeling that is happening in all kinds of platforms and social networks, etc.
Thank you. Yes, Ambassador.
Thank you. I'm just very briefly going to touch upon not exactly this, but kind of the larger picture at the OSCE. We have what we call the third dimension, which is democratic institutions, media freedom, freedom of speech. And that's exactly where this is kind of being monitored, and this is how we exchange views. We need to accept one fact, though, is that in wartime communication has a different, different kind of dynamics. You will not find militaries confirming everything that they do immediately. This is something that I believe is also very important to kind of warn and educate the public. And I'd like to join Thibaut on that. That's media literacy, education, and education is key in this respect. But obviously there are standards, and I truly believe that there are also lines that should not be crossed, and we kind of are trying to make our best so that we also reinforce that message within the OSCE as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And another question on EU strategies. Do digitalization and cyber processes include EU strategies regarding citizen media literacy and technology education? Naturally, I am looking again at you, Thibaut. Just please unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry. Precisely, I didn't hear what you said.
Okay. Do digitalization and cyber processes include EU strategies regarding citizen media literacy and technology education? Okay,
so it's again linked a bit to media literacy. Yes, I mean, we have as a strategy for 2030, this digital compass I was hinting at, and the first pillar is in terms of digital skills. So we have clearly identified this as one of the key elements across the EU as success factor. As you know, probably as well, and you were hinted also at the limit of what EU responsibilities are, the EU is not in charge of education. This is really a competence of member states and regions, but we have nevertheless developed an action plan for digital skills. And media literacy is one of these skills that we believe is very important today, given the size of the disinformation problems. And we are also supporting some more expert development of skills. So for instance, through our program Digital Europe, we will fund, we hope, more than 300 master's courses targeting cybersecurity in particular, where this kind of issues around disinformation would also be covered. So indeed, we are not in charge of education, but we are trying to stimulate member states to do more. And our hope is that 80% of the EU population will have minimal or adequate digital skills by 2030. That's really a strong commitment. And we are going to monitor every year the progress across the EU in this direction.
Thank you. Veronica, any insights from Spanish experience regarding citizen media literacy, Spanish practices in this area?
Yeah, that's also one indicator we are measuring every semester in that case. We see that the trend is that the more and more people is skilled, but we are afraid to realize that this trend is not so strong on basic skills in the case of women and girls. That's a new trend that we have discovered or pointed out very recently. On advanced skills, on the other hand, we have better figures. I mean, the technological careers have increased by 5% points in the last 5 years. So that's a very good trend. In terms of technology careers, but regarding the safety, the cybersecurity management levels, we are still waiting to see better figures and as I mentioned before, we still need more and more people with that kind of very specific skills.
Thank you very much. One more question, and since we only have 5 minutes left, I would also ask the panelists if they have anything additional to add. Please do when you respond to this question, which is not directly linked to your institutional responsibilities, but still, when could we ever expect European Parliament elections to take place via online voting? Yeah, I see that there are emotions among our panelists. Do you think it's feasible security-wise, technology-wise at all? What would be your thoughts? And also, I would like to ask for your concluding remarks as well. So, Thibaut, please start.
Thanks. I think it's a very nice question, because also we would like the participation rate to increase also in European elections. Last time it was already higher because people felt also there was something at stake.
By just half a percentage point, sorry, not really much.
So we want definitely, to have more participation, and maybe indeed, that could be a way to do it. The problem we have is that the electoral law are national for the European elections. It has to happen, in the given dates. But apart from that, there are differences in terms of how they are organized. Also, the systems between member states is not, some vote by region, some by national lists, and so on. So this would also somehow need to be taken into account. But from the technological point of view, I think that we have already in some member states examples of online voting. I mean, I know, for instance, of Estonia, where this is really commonplace. I did myself recently also vote online for some local elections here in Belgium. So I think that the technology is in place, and there are ways to guarantee its safety. So I say, it's really up to national election regulators to decide, but why not? I think it would be a refreshing opportunity, and generally speaking, I think the digital transformation is a great opportunity for democracy. We have new ways of involving citizens in decision makings, in making also our decisions more transparent. In fact, at the EU, people think we are sometimes far away, but we are extremely transparent in terms of the lawmaking. You can see, the justification for a proposal through an impact assessment. You have all the public consultation available online. Once the proposal is made, you can actually follow, the legislative process. You have the transparent situation in council, in parliament, the results from the trilogues. This is not something that you find so easily in all member states, and this is done through online documentation. So I think that just another example that digital can improve our democratic process. Let's fight against disinformation, but let's make the best of it. And that would be my conclusion, so that I don't take too much time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I completely agree with you, except in the case of European Council, where what happens in the council meeting stays in the council meeting usually. But yes, I actually tell my students when I teach EU public policies about the impact assessment practices of the European Commission. Veronica, would you like to respond to this?
Again, I'm not an expert on the issue. The threat in terms of cybersecurity will be huge in case of a European election happening online. Even here in Spain, we don't do online elections, and we have companies that are prepared to support that kind of system. But I understand that there are different issues to be arranged before in terms of rights and equality, and also the technological threat. I would like to see that happening in some time, but I don't think that we can see it in the coming future.
Thank you very much. And Ambassador, your final remarks, please.
Thank you. I'm also going to be very brief. Well, first of all, I think there's also another factor, which is an age gap. Frankly, there are generations that have been less kind of introduced to digital technology. So whether it's partially elections on any level, whether they are doable electronically, I think obviously yes, and probably we're going to see that at some point. But at the same time, I don't believe that that we are going to have digital elections anytime soon that are solely digital. Also, I'm rather analog. I think if you want to do elections truly properly, and in some countries they want, and there are other countries where it's less of a priority. But let's assume that more and more countries are going to be devoted or dedicated to doing it properly. It is the best traceable if you do it manually and with personal representation. I think there is no competition to that, frankly. So I think I would rather keep that practice also, and I think there is also it's also part of the democratic education of citizens, that in every 4 years or as many years they need to kind of show up and present and cast their vote and present themselves, as also as a dedication to the democratic institutions. And I would fear a little bit of a loss of that if we all go digital and we kind of we have this detachment to that moment when we actually cast our votes, which is a very, very important part. And by the way, the OSCE has a great institution for that. What they is doing election monitoring, they are going to do election monitoring just in the coming weeks, also in Hungary and Serbia. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I would like to thank all three panelists for your contributions, your insights and answers to the questions from the audience. I hope the audience enjoyed this discussion as much as I did. And before we leave, I would also like to draw the attention of the audience that after a short break at 3, there will be a very interesting session, which will be a discussion with Mr. Hans-Gert Pöttering, former president of the European Parliament. So please come back to your screens exactly at 3, and then the conference will conclude afterwards with concluding remarks. So once again, thank you very much. I hope we will all stay healthy and well during these difficult times. Thank you very much again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.